At 07:45 on the morning of June 1st, 1940, squadron leader Douglas Bader pushed his Hawker Hurricane to 3,000 feet above the French coast near Dunkirk when a Messerschmitt Bf 109 appeared directly ahead, flying the same direction at nearly identical speed. Bader was 29 years old. He'd been flying combat missions for exactly 4 weeks. 9 years earlier, he'd lost both legs in a training accident that should have ended his career forever. The Messerschmitt pilot held his course. No evasive action. Bader had 400 rounds in his guns and 300 yards of empty sky between him and his first kill. December 14th, 1931. Woodley Airfield near Reading. Bader had been 21, a rising star in No. 23 Squadron, flying Bristol Bulldogs. Someone at the Reading Aero Club made a challenge, said Bader couldn't perform a slow roll below 500 feet. Regulations prohibited aerobatics under 2,000 feet. Bader took off anyway, entered the roll at 200 feet. The left wingtip touched grass. The Bulldog cartwheeled, exploded on impact. His right leg was amputated that day at Royal Berkshire Hospital. The surgeon was J. Leonard Joyce. He told Bader's family the young pilot would likely die from shock and blood loss. 3 days later, infection set in. They amputated the left leg, one above the knee, one below. Bader's logbook entry was brief. Crashed slow rolling near ground. Bad show. The RAF Medical Board reviewed his case in March 32. Their decision was final. No pilot with prosthetic legs could meet flight standards. Bader was retired with full disability pension. He was 21 years old. His flying career was over. For 8 years, Bader worked at Shell Oil Company. He learned to walk on aluminum and leather prosthetics, learned to drive a modified car, played golf with a handicap in single digits, but he never stopped thinking about flying. When Germany invaded Poland in September 39, Bader called every RAF contact he had, every commander who remembered him from Cranwell, from 23 Squadron. He demanded reinstatement. The Air Ministry said no, then said maybe, then agreed to a medical flight test. November 1939, Central Flying School. The examiners expected Bader to fail basic maneuvers. He flew aerobatics, loops, rolls, spins, recovery procedures. The chief examiner marked him exceptional. The RAF had no regulations for prosthetic leg pilots because nobody had tried before. If the medical board cleared him, he could fly. They cleared him in February 1940. Bader's first posting was No. 19 Squadron at Duxford, Spitfires. He flew his first combat patrol over Dunkirk in May. On June 1st, he spotted the Messerschmitt at 3,000 feet, close to 300 yards. Fired. Missed high. The German continued straight ahead. No reaction. Bader corrected aim. Fired again. Tracers walked across the 109's fuselage. The canopy shattered. The Messerschmitt rolled left and dropped toward the channel. First confirmed kill. 2 weeks later, Bader was posted to No. 242 Squadron as acting squadron leader. 242 was predominantly Canadian pilots. They'd been mauled in France, lost friends, lost aircraft, returned to Britain demoralized and angry. Their equipment was inadequate, no spare parts, no tools. Bader sent a message to group headquarters. 242 Squadron operational as regards pilots, but non-operational, repeat, non-operational as regards equipment. He refused combat status until the supply problems were fixed. The parts arrived within 48 hours. If you want to see what happened when the Germans finally shot down Bader at 30,000 feet, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Bader. By July 1940, 242 Squadron was combat ready. The Battle of Britain had begun. German bombers crossed the Channel daily. Messerschmitt fighters escorted them. On July 11th, Bader intercepted a Dornier 17 bomber off Norfolk, fired 2 bursts. The Dornier disappeared into clouds trailing smoke. On August 30th, Bader led 12 Hurricanes against 100 German aircraft over Essex. His squadron claims 12 enemy aircraft destroyed. Lost nobody. Bader's artificial legs created an unexpected advantage. Other pilots blacked out during high G turns when blood drained from their heads. Bader's aluminum legs couldn't pool blood. He stayed conscious longer, turned harder. By August 1941, he'd claimed 21 confirmed kills, 5th highest score in fighter command. He was wing commander at RAF Tangmere, leading 3 squadrons, flying offensive sweeps over France. The Germans knew his call sign. They'd studied his tactics. And on August 9, 1941, 30,000 feet above Le Touquet, they were ready for him. August 9, 1941, 0900 hours, RAF Tangmere. Wing Commander Bader climbed into Spitfire Mark 5A, serial number W3I85, coded DB. His ground crew had already checked the aircraft. 8 machine guns loaded, fuel tanks full, oxygen system functional. Bader strapped in, connected his oxygen mask, started the Merlin engine. 3 squadrons were taking off that morning, 48 Spitfires total. Their mission was a fighter sweep over northern France. The tactical purpose was simple: cross the channel, climb to 30,000 feet, force German fighters into the air, destroy them. Keep Luftwaffe units tied up in France instead of fighting on the Eastern Front, where Germany had invaded Russia 2 months earlier. Bader had flown this exact mission type 63 times since March. The pattern never changed. RAF fighters appeared over France. German radar detected them. Messerschmitt squadrons scrambled. Combat lasted 15 minutes. Both sides claimed victories. Both sides lost aircraft. The Tangmere wing crossed the French coast at 10:15. Visibility was perfect. No clouds. Dangerous conditions for fighter combat. Nothing to hide behind if the engagement went wrong. Bader scanned the sky continuously. Above, below, behind. The Messerschmitts would come from the sun. They always did. At 30,000 feet over Le Touquet, he spotted them. 12 Bf-109Fs climbing from below, 4,000 feet beneath his formation. Bader called the sighting on the radio, pushed his Spitfire into a diving attack. The mathematics of aerial combat favored him. He had altitude, speed, position. The Messerschmitts were still climbing. Hadn't spotted the British fighters yet. Bader selected the lead German aircraft, close to 200 yards. His thumb found the firing button. 8 Browning machine guns opened fire simultaneously, 400 rounds per second. The Messerschmitt's engine erupted in white coolant spray. The pilot rolled away, trailing smoke. Damaged, possibly destroyed. Bader pulled up hard, searched for another target. Found one turning left at his 11 o'clock. He turned inside the German's radius, fired a 3-second burst. The 109's tail section disintegrated. The pilot bailed out. Parachute opened at 28,000 feet. 2 kills in 90 seconds. Bader's total score was now 23 confirmed victories, but the remaining Messerschmitts had reversed the situation. They'd seen the Spitfires. They were turning to engage. Bader's wingman radioed a warning. 4 109s approaching from 7 o'clock high. Bader started his brake turn. Then something hit his aircraft from behind. The impact was catastrophic. Metal tearing, control cables snapping. Bader's Spitfire lurched violently right. He looked back. His vertical stabilizer was gone. Part of the rear fuselage had been sheared away. The aircraft entered an inverted spin, nose down, accelerating toward 30,000 feet of empty air between him and the ground. Bader reached for the canopy jettison handle, pulled hard. The canopy flew off. Wind blast at 300 miles per hour slammed into him. He released his harness buckle, tried to stand. His right leg wouldn't move. It was jammed, trapped between the seat and the control column. The spinning had wedged his prosthetic leg into a position he couldn't break free from. 25,000 feet. The altimeter was unwinding fast. 20,000. Bader pulled on his trapped leg with both hands. The prosthetic didn't budge. 15,000 feet. He calculated his remaining time. Maybe 30 seconds before impact. Maybe less. The Spitfire was accelerating, spinning faster. Bader made his decision. He unbuckled the upper leather strap holding his right prosthetic to his thigh, left the artificial leg jammed in the cockpit, pushed himself upward using arm strength alone. The 300-mile-per-hour wind started dragging him out, but the lower strap was still attached. He was halfway out of the cockpit, halfway trapped. The centrifugal force of the spin was pulling him back toward the seat. 10,000 feet. Bader grabbed his parachute ripcord, pulled. The canopy deployed instantly. The deceleration was violent. His body jerked upward. The remaining leather strap on his prosthetic leg snapped under the load. Bader separated from his disintegrating Spitfire. He looked down. His left leg dangled normally below him. His right leg ended at the knee. The prosthetic was still jammed inside Spitfire W3I85, falling separately. 4 miles south of Le Touquet, his aircraft impacted the ground 12 seconds later. The explosion sent black smoke 200 feet into the air. Bader watched it burn while descending under his parachute. He had one prosthetic leg, no weapon, no escape kit, and he was landing in occupied France, where German soldiers were already running toward his descent point. Bader hit the ground at 11:05. His head struck earth. Everything went black. When he opened his eyes, 2 German soldiers were standing over him. One was unbuckling his parachute harness. The other was staring at Bader's right leg, at the place where his right leg should have been. The soldier said something in German, pointed at the missing leg. Bader understood the tone. The Germans thought he'd lost his leg in the crash. They had no idea both legs were artificial. A Luftwaffe vehicle arrived 15 minutes later. 4 soldiers lifted Bader into the back. They drove north towards Saint-Omer. The hospital was a converted French school building. White walls, Red Cross painted on the roof. German medical staff worked inside treating wounded Luftwaffe aircrew. Bader was the only British patient that day. The examining doctor was a Luftwaffe Oberarzt, captain rank. He checked Bader for injuries: minor concussion, bruised ribs on the left side, abrasions on both arms. Then the doctor noticed Bader's left leg, the prosthetic. He stopped, called for an interpreter, asked questions. Bader explained through the interpreter: both legs lost, December 31, Bristol Bulldog crash. The doctor asked how long Bader had been flying with prosthetics. Since February 40, 18 months of combat operations. The Oberarzt didn't believe him initially. No Air Force would allow a double amputee to fly fighters. But Bader's service record was in his uniform pocket. The doctor read it: Wing Commander, Distinguished Service Order, Distinguished Flying Cross, Bar to both medals, Commander of Tangmere Wing, 23 confirmed victories. The doctor realized he was treating one of Britain's top fighter aces. He left the room, returned 30 minutes later with his commanding officer. Oberstleutnant Adolf Galland entered the hospital room at 1300 hours. He was 30 years old. Gruppenkommandeur of Jagdgeschwader 26, 94 confirmed kills. Germany's third highest scoring ace. Galland had heard Bader's name before. British intelligence reports mentioned the aggressive wing commander at Tangmere, the one who led large fighter formations over France. But nobody in German intelligence knew about the prosthetic legs. Galland looked at Bader's artificial leg, then at the empty space where his right leg ended. He spoke enough English to communicate directly, asked about the crash, about the missing prosthetic. Bader explained: right leg trapped in the cockpit, had to leave it behind. Parachute deployment snapped the strap. Galland nodded, said he understood, then asked what Bader needed: medical care, food, water, a replacement leg? Bader said he needed the replacement leg to walk. Galland said he would arrange something, asked how to contact the RAF, what message to send. Bader provided the information. Galland said he would speak to higher command. He left the room. Bader didn't know if the offer was genuine. German officers were usually correct and professional with captured aircrew, but arranging for the enemy to deliver a prosthetic leg seemed impossible. That night, Galland contacted Luftwaffe headquarters at Lille, explained the situation, requested permission to offer safe passage for a British aircraft to drop medical supplies to a captured wing commander. The request went up the chain, reached General Major Theo Osterkamp, then General Feldmarschall Hugo Sperl. Finally, it reached Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring in Berlin. Göring himself had been a fighter pilot in the First World War. He understood the bond between airmen, even enemy airmen. He approved the request on August 10th. On August 11th, Galland sent a message through Red Cross channels, addressed to RAF Fighter Command, stated that Wing Commander Bader was alive, in German custody, required a replacement prosthetic leg. The Luftwaffe would guarantee safe passage for one British aircraft to drop the leg by parachute over Saint-Omer airfield. No anti-aircraft fire, no fighter interception. The message included coordinates: specified a 4-hour window on August 19th. The message reached Air Vice Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory at No. 11 Group Headquarters on August 12th. Lee Mallory knew Bader personally, had worked with him throughout the Battle of Britain. The request was unprecedented, an enemy offering safe passage during wartime, but it was also an opportunity. The RAF had been planning a major bombing raid on Ghazni Power Station near Bethune for mid-August. St. Omer was 20 miles from Bethune. The bombers would be in the area anyway. Lee Mallory approved a plan. 6 Bristol Blenheim bombers would fly the mission, part of Circus 81. Large fighter escort. The bombers would drop Bader's replacement leg over St. Omer, then continue to their primary target at Bethune. The Germans were offering safe passage for the leg drop. They weren't offering safe passage for the rest of the mission, and Lee Mallory had no intention of wasting the opportunity to strike a strategic target just because the Luftwaffe was being chivalrous about one captured pilot. August 19th, 1941, 0800 hours, RAF Wattisham. 6 Bristol Blenheim bombers taxied to the runway. Each aircraft carried a full bomb load for Ghazni Power Station, but Blenheim R3843, coded WV-F, carried something extra, a wooden crate. Inside was a right prosthetic leg, plus leather straps, bandages, socks, tobacco, chocolate. A note attached to the crate read, "To the German flight commander of the Luftwaffe at St. Omer. Please deliver to Wing Commander Bader, RAF prisoner of war." Flight Sergeant Jack Nicholson piloted WV-F. He was 23, from Toronto. He'd been briefed on the unusual mission parameters. Fly to St. Omer, drop the crate by parachute. The Luftwaffe had guaranteed safe passage, no flak, no fighters. After the drop, proceed to primary target, Bethune Power Station, 20 miles southeast. Expect heavy resistance there. The Blenheims crossed the English coast at 0845. Fighter escort joined them. 48 Spitfires, 12 Hurricanes. The formation climbed to 15,000 feet over the channel. German radar tracked them from Calais. Luftwaffe headquarters at Lille monitored the incoming raid. Gallen had briefed his fighters. Do not engage until after the leg drop. After that, standard combat procedures apply. At St. Omer Hospital, Bader had been moved to a room with a window facing the airfield. German guards told him to watch. The RAF was coming. Bader didn't believe them at first, thought it was propaganda. But at 0930, he heard aircraft engines, multiple aircraft. He looked out the window. 6 Blenheim bombers in formation, fighter escorts circling above. Nicholson brought WV-F over St. Omer Airfield at 3,000 feet. He opened the bomb bay, released the wooden crate. A small parachute deployed. The crate descended slowly, landed on the grass beside the main runway. German ground crew ran to retrieve it. The Blenheims reformed, turned southeast, toward Bethune. Galland watched from his airfield command post. The leg had been delivered. The safe passage agreement was complete. He picked up his radio, ordered his fighters to take off, engage the bombers. The agreement covered St. Omer only, not Bethune. Messerschmitt 109s from 3 squadrons scrambled, climbed to intercept altitude. The RAF fighter escort saw them coming. Combat started at 15,000 feet over Bethune. The bombers reached Ghazni Power Station at 1000 hours. Weather had deteriorated. Cloud cover obscured the target. The Blenheims couldn't bomb accurately. They dropped their loads anyway. Most missed. The power station suffered minor damage. 3 Blenheims were damaged by flak. 1 Spitfire was shot down. 2 Messerschmitts were claimed destroyed. Galland later stated in an interview that the RAF had dropped the leg after bombing his airfield. He was incorrect. The leg drop happened before the bombing run. But the Germans were irritated anyway. The British had used their chivalrous gesture as cover for a combat mission. At St. Omer Hospital, German orderlies brought the wooden crate to Bader's room, opened it. Inside was a right prosthetic leg, newer model than the one he'd lost, better quality straps. The leg had been manufactured by De Sutter Brothers in London, the same company that made Bader's original prosthetics in '32. Bader strapped it on, stood up, walked across the room. The German doctor watched, asked if it fit properly. Bader said it was perfect. That same afternoon, Bader sent a message through Red Cross channels. Leg thankfully received. 3 words. The RAF confirmed receipt of his message on August 21st, but Fighter Command also noted something else. German security at Saint-Omer Hospital was surprisingly lax. Windows weren't barred. Guards rotated on predictable schedules, 1 guard per corridor at night. The hospital was a temporary holding facility, not a proper prisoner of war camp. Bader noticed the same security gaps. He had 2 functional prosthetic legs now. He could walk. He could climb. And the hospital had bed sheets. Strong cotton, long enough to tie together. His window was on the 2nd floor, 20 feet above ground. Outside his window was farmland, then roads leading west toward the French coast, toward the English Channel, 15 miles away. On August 24th, Bader tied 4 bed sheets together, secured one end to his bed frame, waited until 0200 hours, opened his window, dropped the sheets, climbed out, started descending. He was halfway down when a hospital worker spotted him from a ground floor window, started shouting. Guards responded within 30 seconds. Bader was pulled back through the window at 02:15. The German guards confiscated his bed sheets, posted a 2nd guard outside his door. The hospital administrator arrived at 0700, informed Bader he was being transferred. Saint-Omer was no longer suitable for a prisoner who attempted escape. The Luftwaffe was sending him to a proper prisoner of war camp, Stalag Luft III at Sagan, 300 miles east in occupied Poland. On August 27th, Bader was transported by train. German guards accompanied him. He arrived at Stalag Luft III on August 30th. The camp held approximately 2,000 RAF prisoners, mostly aircrew shot down over Europe. The camp was divided into compounds, each compound surrounded by double barbed wire fences, guard towers at each corner. Searchlights operated all night. The camp commandant was Luftwaffe Oberst Friedrich Wilhelm von Lindiner-Wildau. He ran the camp according to Geneva Convention standards: adequate food, medical care, mail service through Red Cross. Prisoners could receive packages from home, but the camp also had established escape procedures. British prisoners had been digging tunnels since the camp opened in April 41, bribing guards, forging documents, building civilian clothes from dyed uniforms. The senior British officer was Group Captain Harry Day. Day had flown with Bader in No. 23 Squadron back in 31, before Bader's crash. Day remembered him, welcomed him to the camp, briefed him on ongoing escape plans. Bader announced his intention immediately. He would escape. Day explained the reality. The camp was 300 miles from neutral territory. Switzerland was 600 miles southwest. Sweden was 400 miles north. Poland was occupied. Germany was everywhere. Prisoners who escaped rarely made it more than 50 miles. Most were recaptured within 48 hours. Bader said he'd try anyway. The German guards at Stalag Luft III had learned about Bader before his arrival. The ace with prosthetic legs who tried escaping from Saint-Omer Hospital 5 days after receiving his replacement leg. The commandant decided on a security measure. Every night at 2200 hours, guards entered Bader's barracks, confiscated both prosthetic legs, returned them at 0600 hours the next morning. Bader couldn't walk during the night, couldn't participate in tunnel work, couldn't reach the wire. But Bader found other ways to be useful. He helped forge documents. British prisoners had established a document forgery operation, German travel permits, identity papers, work permits. The forgers needed references, needed examples of authentic German documents. Bader spoke with other prisoners, collected information about German administrative procedures, railroad schedules, guard shift patterns. In October 41, a prisoner named Bill Ash proposed an escape plan. Ash had obtained a diagram of a Messerschmitt 110 cockpit, plus instructions for starting the engines, flying procedures. A German training airfield existed at Gleiwitz, 150 miles southeast. The airfield had Messerschmitt 109s. If 2 prisoners could reach Gleiwitz, steal an aircraft, they could fly to Sweden or Switzerland. The plan required getting onto a work detail. British prisoners were sometimes sent on labor assignments outside the camp, building roads, clearing forests, under guard supervision. But guards rotated. Some were less vigilant than others. Ash proposed switching places with 2 prisoners assigned to Gleiwitz work detail, using forged papers, German uniforms stolen piece by piece over months. Bader volunteered immediately. Ash said the plan had problems. Gleiwitz was 150 miles away. The Messerschmitt 109 had a combat radius of 400 miles, not enough to reach Sweden from Gleiwitz, barely enough to reach Switzerland if they flew southwest and avoided all German airspace, which was impossible. Bader said they should try anyway. On November 3rd, the work detail departed for Gleiwitz, 20 British prisoners, 4 German guards. Ash and Bader had switched places with 2 legitimate prisoners. Their forged papers identified them as RAF flight lieutenants assigned to road construction. The guards checked papers at the gate, let them through. The group boarded a transport truck, drove southeast toward Gleiwitz. They arrived at Gleiwitz on November 4th. The German training airfield was 3 miles from the work camp. Ash and Bader could see aircraft in the distance, but when they reached the airfield perimeter, they discovered a problem. No Messerschmitt 109s. The airfield had Messerschmitt 109Es, earlier model, combat radius of 250 miles, not enough to reach any neutral country from their position. Ash and Bader discussed options. Steal the aircraft anyway, fly west, hope they reached Allied lines before fuel ran out. But German air defenses covered western Poland. Radar stations, flak batteries, fighter squadrons. 2 British pilots in a stolen Messerschmitt wouldn't last 30 minutes. They decided to abort, return to the work camp, wait for another opportunity. But on November 5th, disaster struck. A German inspector visited Stalag Luft 3, routine check. He reviewed prisoner rosters, noticed 2 prisoners missing from Bader's barracks, started an investigation, discovered the switch, sent a message to Gleiwitz. Ash and Bader were identified within hours. German military police arrived at Gleiwitz work camp on November 6th, arrested Ash and Bader, transported them back to Stalag Luft 3 under armed guard. Commandant von Lindeiner was furious. The forged papers were sophisticated. The identity switch had bypassed multiple security checkpoints. The camp's document control procedures had failed completely. Bader was placed in solitary confinement. 10 days, standard punishment for attempted escape. Cell was 8 feet by 6 feet. 1 window, 1 bed, 1 bucket. Food delivered twice daily. No books, no contact with other prisoners. The German guards continued removing his prosthetic legs each night, but von Lindeiner added new restrictions. After release from solitary, Bader would be under constant surveillance. Guards would accompany him to meals, to exercise periods, to the latrine. On November 16th, Bader was released back to general population. The surveillance lasted 3 days. Then the guards relaxed procedures. Too many prisoners, not enough guards. Within a week, Bader was moving freely around the compound again, meeting with escape committee members, planning next attempts. British prisoners at Stalag Luft 3 had 3 active tunnel projects in November 41. Tom, Dick, Harry. Tom started in Hut 123, Dick in Hut 122, Harry in Hut 104. Each tunnel was 30 feet deep, below German sound detection equipment. Tunnelers worked in shifts, digging with stolen tools, shoring the walls with bedboards, disposing of sand in gardens, under latrines, mixed with legitimate soil. Bader couldn't dig. His prosthetic legs made tunnel work impossible, too confined, too much crawling. But he worked surface operations, watched for guards, timed patrol schedules, distributed forged papers. In December 41, the Germans discovered Tom. Guards found the entrance during a surprise inspection, flooded the tunnel, arrested 15 prisoners involved in the operation, but Dick and Harry remained undiscovered. Winter arrived. Temperatures dropped below freezing. Tunnel work slowed. Frozen ground was harder to dig. Disposal of sand became difficult. Snow revealed tracks. Fresh digging. The escape committee decided to pause major operations until spring. Focus on preparation instead. Forging documents, gathering civilian clothes, studying railroad timetables. In March 42, Bader was informed of a transfer. The German High Command had reviewed his file. 5 escape attempts in 7 months. St. Omer Hospital, Gleiwitz. 3 unsuccessful attempts at Stalag Luft 3 that were detected in planning stages. The Luftwaffe classified him as persistent escape risk. He was being sent to a maximum security facility, Oflag 4C, known to prisoners as Kolditz Castle. Colditz was located in Saxony, 80 miles south of Berlin. The castle sat on a cliff above the Mulde River. Built in medieval times, walls were 7 feet thick. Windows were barred. Guard-to-prisoner ratio was 1-to-1, highest in any German camp. Prisoners sent to Colditz were men who'd escaped from other camps, who'd attempted escape multiple times, who were deemed too dangerous for standard facilities. Bader arrived at Colditz on April 2, 1942. The castle held approximately 200 prisoners, British, French, Polish, Dutch, Belgian, all persistent escapers. The senior British officer was Colonel Willie Todd. He briefed Bader on castle security. Guards patrolled continuously. Roll calls happened 4 times daily. Random searches, random cell inspections. Prisoners caught attempting escape faced immediate transfer to punishment camps in Germany proper. But Colditz prisoners were inventive. They'd built a glider in the attic, planning to launch it from the roof, fly across the river, land in neutral territory. Engineers calculated launch speed, glide ratio, landing distance. The project was months from completion, required absolute secrecy. German guards never entered the attic. Too many stairs, too remote. Bader met the glider team in May 42, offered his expertise. He'd flown gliders during RAF training in 29, understood aerodynamics, lift coefficients, stall speeds. The team welcomed his input, but the glider wouldn't be ready until autumn at earliest. Bader decided to attempt other methods first. In June 42, Bader joined a tunnel project, starting from the chapel basement, digging toward the outer wall. The tunnel was 20 feet deep, 40 feet long, 8 more feet to reach beyond the wall. But on July 8th, German guards discovered it during a routine inspection, arrested 12 prisoners. Bader wasn't caught because he'd been working surface operations that day. The German commandant called a special assembly, announced new security measures. All tunnel entrances would be sealed with concrete. Chapel basement would be closed permanently. Prisoners would face reduced rations for 2 weeks as collective punishment, and Bader specifically would be moved to a more secure cell. Guards would check his cell twice daily, unexpected times, random intervals. Bader spent the next 3 years at Colditz, made 4 more escape attempts. All were detected before execution. By spring 45, Germany was collapsing. Allied armies pushed from west and east. Soviet forces approached from Poland, American forces from France. On April 16, 1945, American troops from 1st Army reached Colditz. April 16, 1945, 0900 hours, Colditz Castle. Prisoners heard artillery fire in the distance, American guns, getting closer. German guards abandoned their post throughout the morning. By noon, only the commandant and 3 guards remained. At 1400 hours, American Sherman tanks arrived at the castle gates. 1st Army, 69th Infantry Division. The gates opened. 200 prisoners walked out. Bader crossed the castle courtyard at 1430. First time in 3 years. American soldiers stared at his walk, the distinctive gait, artificial legs. An American lieutenant asked how long he'd been prisoner. 3 years, 9 months, since August 41. The lieutenant asked about his legs. Lost them in 31. Been flying since 40. The lieutenant didn't believe him until other British prisoners confirmed the story. The Americans transported liberated prisoners to processing centers in Western Germany. Bader reached American lines on April 18th. British liaison officers met him there, verified his identity, arranged transport to England. On April 22nd, Bader landed at RAF Northolt. 3 years, 9 months after being shot down. He was 34 years old. The RAF debriefed him for 2 days, asked about German prison camps, security procedures, guard rotations, tunnel locations. Bader provided detailed information about Stalag Luft III, about Colditz, about German treatment of prisoners. The debrief officers documented everything. But they also told him something unexpected. He was famous. While he'd been imprisoned, the British press had published his story. The legless ace who'd shot down 23 Germans, who'd been shot down himself, who'd escaped multiple times. The public knew his name. In June 45, the RAF organized a victory flypast over London. 300 aircraft, commemorating the Battle of Britain, celebrating victory in Europe. Air Vice Marshal Lee Mallory selected Bader to lead the formation. Bader would fly his Spitfire at the head of 300 aircraft over central London. June 15, 1945. 1,500 hours. Bader took off from Duxford in a Spitfire Mark IX. Behind him, 300 fighters formed up. Hurricanes, Spitfires, Typhoons, Tempests. The formation flew south, reached London at 1,600 hours. Bader led them over Buckingham Palace, over Westminster, over the Thames. Crowds filled the streets below, watching, cheering. The war in Europe had ended 5 weeks earlier. Germany had surrendered. Hitler was dead. The flypast was Britain's victory celebration, and the legless pilot who shouldn't have been flying at all was leading it. In February 46, Bader left the RAF permanently. He was 35, had served 6 years, combat from 40 to 41, prisoner from 41 to 45. The RAF offered him a staff position, training command, administrative work. Bader declined. He'd had enough of military life, enough of war. He returned to Shell Oil Company, same company that had employed him from 32 to 39. Shell made him managing director of Shell Aircraft Limited, corporate aviation division. He flew their aircraft, managed their flight operations, made promotional trips around the world. But Bader also focused on advocacy work, for amputees, for disabled veterans. He joined BLESMA, British Limbless Ex-Servicemen's Association, became a trustee, spoke at events, visited hospitals, met with newly disabled veterans, told them his story, showed them his artificial legs, demonstrated that disability didn't mean inability. He said the same thing repeatedly. A disabled person who fights back is not disabled, but inspired. In 1954, author Paul Brickhill published Reach for the Sky, Bader's biography. The book became an immediate bestseller in Britain. 2 years later, it was adapted into a film. Actor Kenneth More played Bader. The film brought Bader's story to millions, made him a national hero, but it also reconnected him with someone from his past. Adolf Galland had survived the war, surrendered to American forces in May 45. After the war, he'd returned to civilian life in Germany. In 1953, Galland traveled to Britain, met Bader in London. Their meeting was cordial, professional. They discussed their respective experiences, the war, fighter tactics, prison camps. They discovered they'd both been flying on the same days, same airspace, possibly encountered each other in combat without knowing it. The meeting started a friendship that lasted decades. Galland visited Britain regularly. Bader traveled to Germany. They appeared together at aviation events, air shows, veterans gatherings, former enemies who respected each other. In 1976, Bader was knighted, Sir Douglas Bader, recognition for his advocacy work, for his service to disabled people. But by 1982, Bader's health was declining. Heart problems, decades of strain from walking on prosthetic legs, carrying his body weight on stumps and straps. On September 5, 82, Bader attended a dinner at London Guildhall, honoring Marshal Arthur Harris, Bomber Command Chief. Bader died that night, heart attack. He was 72 years old. Bader's funeral was held on September 15, 1982, RAF Hendon. Hundreds attended. RAF officers, former pilots from 242 Squadron, veterans from Colditz, representatives from BLESMA. Adolf Galland sent a wreath from Germany, unable to attend due to age and health. But he sent a message. It said simply, "A great fighter pilot, a greater man." Bader's legacy extended beyond his combat record. 23 confirmed victories, 5th highest RAF score in the Battle of Britain, wing commander at 30. Those were impressive statistics, but they weren't what made him significant. What made him significant was what he proved, that disability wasn't disqualification, that determination could overcome bureaucracy, that a man with 2 artificial legs could outfly men with natural limbs. The RAF had rejected him in 32. Medical regulations. No exceptions possible. But when war came, when Britain needed every pilot, those regulations changed. Not because the regulations were wrong, but because Bader proved they were incomplete. He demonstrated that physical disability didn't equal inability, that prosthetic legs didn't prevent high-G maneuvers, didn't prevent aerobatic flight, didn't prevent combat effectiveness. Other amputees followed his path. During the war, after the war, pilots who'd lost limbs in combat, who'd been told their flying careers were over, who pointed to Bader's example, said if he could fly, they could fly. The RAF reconsidered policies, evaluated cases individually. Some amputee pilots returned to service. Not all, but more than would have been allowed before Bader. His escape attempts inspired prisoners throughout German camps, not because the attempt succeeded, most failed, but because he tried. 5 months after losing his right leg in the bailout, he was climbing out windows on bed sheets. 6 months later, attempting to steal German aircraft. The Germans confiscated his legs every night. He kept trying anyway. Prisoners at Colditz called him bloody-minded, stubborn, impossible to discourage. Those were compliments. After the war, his advocacy work reached thousands. Blesma members, hospital patients, newly disabled veterans. He visited them, showed them his prosthetics, walked without canes, demonstrated what was possible. His message was consistent. Disability is only limiting if you accept limitations. Fight back, adapt, overcome. Simple message, but coming from a man who'd lost both legs at 21 and still led 300 aircraft over London at 34, the message carried weight. The Douglas Bader Foundation continues his work today, provides grants to disabled people, funds mobility equipment, supports independence. The foundation has helped thousands since its establishment. Aircraft carriers, schools, and public buildings bear his name. RAF Bader House at Cranwell, streets in British cities. His artificial legs are displayed at RAF Museum Stafford, not open to public but preserved as historical artifacts. Military historians debate his tactical contributions. The Big Wing controversy, whether massed fighter formations were more effective than dispersed squadrons during Battle of Britain. But the debate misses the larger point. Bader brought aggressive leadership when Britain desperately needed it. He took demoralized Canadian pilots and built an elite squadron, flew offensive sweeps when doctrine was defensive, forced the Luftwaffe to keep fighters in France instead of Russia. His story reveals what's possible when someone refuses to accept limitations. The RAF said he couldn't fly. He flew. Doctors said double amputees couldn't handle high-G combat. He turned harder than able-bodied pilots. Germans said he couldn't escape. He tried 5 times. Douglas Bader proved that tin legs could shoot down Messerschmitts, that a man written off at 21 could lead fighter wings at 30. He didn't let disability define him. He let action define him. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about pilots who refuse to surrender. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Douglas Bader doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.